Woman, an in-depth exploration of the world of women today with Sandra Elkin.
Good evening and welcome to Woman. Our topic tonight is household workers. My guests are Edith Barksdale Sloan, Executive Director of the National Committee on Household Employment. Edith is a practicing attorney in Washington, and Josephine Hulett. Josephine is the field officer for the National Committee on Household Employment. Jo is also a licensed practical nurse who was a household worker for 20 years. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Do you both feel that slavery isn't dead?
It's very much alive and in household employment. Household employment is a relic of slavery and indentured servitude, and it hasn't changed much over the past 100 years. There's still the attitude that that's a girl, even though she might be a 54-year-old woman, who comes in to do the dirty work that you don't want to do, that you really don't have to pay her much for it because it's a woman's work, and who pays for women's work? And so it's very much alive.
Jo, you were a domestic a long time ago, about 20 years ago.
Not really 20 years ago, just 5 years ago.
Oh, really?
That's right. You know, basically most people say, were you really? And I've often asked them, well, why not? And most people will say, well, you don't look. Well, I said, how am I supposed to look? All people don't look alike, and so why should I look in a typical way? And this was the attitude that people had, that a household worker was supposed to be someone, you know, with a rag tied around her head. She's supposed to be fat, you know, of all kinds of stereotypes. And it was amazing to me to find this kind of thing still go on, and it still goes on through history. Still same type of slavery.
What was it like when you first started?
Well, I was one of those people who knew there was something different, but was trapped into the occupation from a lack of education and from a lack of having opportunities. I found it to be very degrading at times, and I found some employers were fair. Now, all employers aren't, I'd say, the worst employer, but I didn't find two greater ones. For the first 20 years, 15 years, the last 5 years of my employment, I found a person who thought I was human. And most people haven't thought of household workers as being human. So you certainly know that you can't talk about being a woman and being human at the same time and then being black. So I had 3 strikes against me no matter what I did.
But
very bad.
You've surprised people by not being ashamed of that fact and admitting it readily.
I definitely do, because I don't want to ever forget, never forget where I come from. But to remember what my sisters out there, and many of them are white, are suffering under. And sometimes white sisters are stepped on even worse. And we're saying to our white sisters who are able to hire, and black ones as well, that we are your sisters, and we expect to be treated that way, be paid for what we do. And if I brought that across, I'm very pleased about the fact of being able to say so that no other woman is ashamed of her occupation again in life.
One of the problems is that women are usually the ones who employ household employees. And we say to women, look, you're not going to be liberated until that sister who's working in your kitchen is also liberated.
Right on.
And if you exploit her, and if you vent all of your frustrations downward on her, you are just further exploiting another woman, and you're keeping yourself down. So in order to lift yourself out, you're also going to have to work and give her a decent wage and good working conditions, and respect her for the value of her labor. And don't denigrate her because she's doing your work, and therefore you're denigrating yourself and your work when you denigrate her.
Or, you know, a lot of times I hear the same old myth as I travel throughout the country. Well, Mrs. Hulett, what are you doing? Do you really believe in this? I said, of course I do. Are you really perpetuating the field? No, that is not true. We are trying to upgrade it for the women that is in it. And when I hear a woman walk up to me and say many times as I travel, most people become very controversial about it. They'll say, well, my girl, quote, unquote, doesn't want it out. Doesn't want what? Her Social Security out. I said, ma'am, that is the law. You can't do this. Or she'll say, well, I wouldn't hire another woman. And to my sisters who are liberated and talk about she will not hire another woman because she feels as though she's exploiting her, you might be saving her from a monster. If you're paying the right kind of salary and you're paying and giving her the benefits that any worker, and treating her as a worker or employer and not as your servant or your slave, then I don't feel you should have any guilt feelings about it.
We sort of view the whole thing differently in this country, don't we, than some European countries especially.
Definitely. Well, because of the history and because of the stigma on household employment in the United States, it is probably one of the lowest paying and lowest regarded occupations in the country. But for example, in Japan, the men and women who go into household employment, and there the men go into it as well as the women, they're trained by the government and they receive some of the best salaries of many of the service workers in the country. In Europe, the women and men go to special schools. It's considered a profession and they're treated with respect and dignity, and they take great pride in their profession. Now here in the United States, it's something that the women who can't get any other types of jobs are usually forced to do. It's usually a 51-year-old black woman with a 9th grade education. 4 strikes. She's a woman, she's black, she's middle-aged, and she lacks a good formal education. Now there are many Latin American and Native American women also coming into it, and many immigrant women from Europe, and they're all treated the same way. In fact, some of the immigrant women from Europe are treated even worse, and certainly the Latin American women are taken advantage of because of the language problem. So in this country, it is considered something which is denigrating and something that no one wants to do, and so therefore it's an occupation which we feel, unless it is changed radically so that it is the same as any other service occupation with good wages, working conditions, fringe benefits, and all of the laws like workers' compensation and unemployment compensation, and also respect for the value of the labor and also the person, then it should be eradicated. It should end tomorrow. And one thing we do is to tell young women, don't go into it.
That's for sure.
Unless this change, don't you go into it. There is no future in household employment today, and we're just trying to change it for women who are stuck in it.
Yes, because the ones that are in it, if you take a look at them, I know, for instance, I was able to get out. I'm only one out of a few. Many of them are able to get out. But think of a woman who works all of her life, don't have Social Security, don't have paid vacations, don't have holidays, have no medical protection, no hospitalization. Now she has 2 choices in life. Her choices are she can either die before getting ill or die before retirement, because there's nothing there for her. So now would you encourage anyone to go into this kind of an occupation knowing what is wrong? Many of them are there because they have no food. They have children. I know that's why I was there. I had no other job I could get at that particular time. So this was one of the reasons why.
And one of the most devastating things is that since these Social Security laws are ignored and Social Security is not paid in for household workers, you have a large number of women over 65, over 70 in household employment. 15% of all household workers are over the retirement age of 62.
Is it true also, though, that some household workers ask employees not to pay Social Security?
Well, some of them are very fearful because they don't want to see that little bit of money. Okay, if you're receiving $2 an hour, which is the federal minimum wage, if something is deducted from that, you have less take-home pay. So it is up to us to educate the workers as to why you must lose that little bit now for tomorrow, and also see if she can get it as a fringe benefit from her employer, that she pay both parts if possible. So it will be a special benefit for the worker. If not, you must pay your other part. I can't go to my office and say, well, don't take out my Social Security. It's the law. And this occupation should be the same as any other occupation.
Well, let me tell you a little story. I happened to be in a few weeks ago, and one of the women was on, in fact, I was on Capitol Hill at a party, and they said, one of the women said to me, you know, I have a woman who works for me. She doesn't want her Social Security taken out. I said, but that is the law, and it's been mandatory since 1951, and you're breaking the law. She says, well, but I've had her too long to let her go. I said, if you don't let her go, what you are doing is you're building in a career for her on welfare. That's exactly, you're perpetuating the field, and then later you're going to be saying, well, that's where she wanted to be. But you're not looking at it that way. She says, well, who would take out her Social Security, and how would I deal with that in case? I explained to her the 3 months period. And I was trying to get her over to the corner to Mrs. Sloan, because I felt her being the attorney would be able to open her eyes a little bit more and tell about what the laws were all about and what would happen to her.
Also, there's a penalty for an employer who does not deduct the Social Security. She can be penalized by the Internal Revenue Service, made to pay a fine, plus the back Social Security earnings for both herself and the worker.
All right, let's backtrack a little bit and tell us exactly what the law is.
Now, for Social Security, anyone who works, who receives $50 from one employer during a quarter, 3 months of the year, is covered by the Social Security law, and the employer is supposed to deduct 5.8% of the employee's salary as her Social Security earning and add an additional 5.8%. And every 3 months, she is to send that in to the Internal Revenue Service. It's a special form, which she fills out, a very simple form, and sends it in with the employee's Social Security number. That is all that has to be done. Now, the employee, if she wants to know how much she has in her Social Security earnings, can send in a little card with just her name and address and her Social Security number, and can get a form back from our Social Security Administration saying, you have 10 years of earnings, or so many quarters. You need 40 quarters of earnings in order to draw. And if she has that, she knows she's been covered, and that she'll have a little something to look forward to when she's 62 or 65.
Instead of looking, like I say, ending up on the welfare roll. Because, for instance, like this one lady, as I was just mentioning before this, we were just saying, she said to me, well, how would I say, do your husband ever hire any secretaries come in part-time and these kind of things, you know, that come in to do the temporal work? She said, yes, I do. I said, well, who takes out her Social Security? She said, oh, my office. I said, that's your answer for the household worker. Just as simple as that. But you haven't begun to look at her as a worker. You feel she needs to be covered, but you don't think of the household worker. But that is your so-called dearest possession, your home and your children. To me, I don't think you're looking at it that way.
What about the minimum wage law? Household workers are now covered.
They
right?
are now covered, and we're really very upset because we know that the word hasn't gotten out. We found out that even some of the officers working for the wage and hour divisions of the local bureaus of employment services don't realize that household workers are covered. But they are covered. They have been as of May 1st, 1974, and the federal minimum wage is now $2 an hour. They also receive overtime protection. Anytime worked over 8 hours, they can receive time and a half unless they live within the home. They're live-in workers. There are penalties for employers who do not pay that.
That's right.
For example, if the employee reports the employer to the wage and hour division of the local BES, Bureau of Employment Services, they can come after her, and either the Secretary of Labor or the employee through her private attorney can sue the employer. She has to pay all of the back wages for the difference between the wage she was paying and the minimum wage, plus equal liquidating damages.
What does
plus
that mean?
That is like a penalty for
Yes.
not paying. So, for example, suppose it's $300 she owes the employee. She would have to pay another $300 for a penalty. It's called liquidating damages, plus the employee's attorney's fees and any court charges. So there's quite a stiff penalty. And also, if an employee reports an employer for not paying her the minimum wage, she cannot be fired for reporting
right.
her.
Because
So
they're
there's a-
again, it's showing that that was the result of this, and then she has another course of reaction. What we're saying is employers need to know, we feel both of them need to know.
It's the law.
Yes, it's a law, and it's no longer now a privilege of my girl, quote, doesn't want it out. She's a woman, she's your employer, and that's how you're going to have to treat her.
And this is very important because for the first time it gave household technicians a legal mandate. They are now equal before the law as far as minimum wage and overtime protection. We also have special unemployment compensation coverage. This became effective January 1st, 1975. So if a household worker becomes unemployed because her employer had to cut back, she can go to unemployment compensation, and if she is within the state's regulations, she can get unemployment compensation for working.
And that, again, is why it's very important to have your Social Security taken out. It gives you the records. No one can say, well, I'm not there, or she's not there, or she can't get Medicaid. She can't get Medicare because if you've never paid in, you don't have any records on that, and you have to have that kind of qualifications.
And employers must keep records. They must keep a record of the employee's name, her address, her Social Security number, the hours that she works per week, and the pay that she's been paid.
Is there one place where all this information is? Do you have a
Well,
booklet or
they
something?
could send to us, and we have all the information, and that would be to the National Committee on Household Employment at 8120 Fenton Street in Silver Spring, Maryland, 20910.
I'm sure you'll get, some response to that. Let's talk about the National Committee on Household Employment for a minute. It is not a union, is it?
No, it isn't. It's a private service organization, but we do have memberships. For example, we have 41 local affiliates of household workers in 25 states, approximating 25,000 men and women who are household workers, who are members of the National Committee. We serve household workers. We are exclusively concerned with their welfare, their benefits, and with also restructuring the occupation and reorienting the worker as to what is her rights, the value of her service, giving her a new sense of self-respect, and also educating the public so they can know the special problems and special concerns, so they can know about the federal minimum wage and overtime protection, Social Security, benefits. Why shouldn't a household worker receive paid vacation, paid holidays, and paid sick leave? We receive it. We consider it part of our natural fringe benefits for any job that we have.
How do you determine those things, Edith?
Okay, suppose you have a woman coming in once a week to clean for general cleaning. We suggest that you give her 2 days paid vacation. Now, if she gets 2 days paid vacation from 5 employers, she has 2 weeks paid vacation.
That's over the year.
That's over one
That's
year.
over the year.
That's for 1 year. We also suggest that during that year you give her a day's paid sick leave. So she'll have at least 5 days paid sick leave. And if there's a holiday like Christmas or Thanksgiving falling on that day, that you pay her for that holiday.
Because
And-
thinking about that, you think about that sick leave, which you hit upon, is very good. I remember my child being ill, and I didn't have the day off. If I took the day off to take him to the doctor, then my employer would have said I was lazy. Not that my child was ill. I had that not built in as I do now, or with you on the job. And if I had missed the second day, I wouldn't have had a job. So if I was given 2 days to where I could use it without lying, saying, well, something else happened, someone died in the family. As one woman said one day, everybody in her family has died out in the last few years. But it was built in because she was not given any of the so-called fringe benefits that other workers have forgotten. This is the reason for having a sick leave day. If I call in and say I'm sick, well, they're aware of that. Even regardless, I have to go to the doctor, I'm ill, that is my right, that's built in. This is why you stay on the job, as you know, because you have some kind of benefits. But to work all year long without a vacation, I worked 12 years, didn't have a vacation because I couldn't get one. Finally, I was able to get one, but I didn't have enough money to go away.
It's inhuman. You know, you can't work all that time and do a good job without some sort of break. And there's one other problem that we often face. We think that most employers don't realize that household workers are indeed human beings. They consider them some sort of things, you know, invisible persons which come to do a job, and they don't want to pay them for their service. We say household employment is a service like any other occupation. If your car breaks down and you can't afford to pay that mechanic, you're not going to have a car until you can. Why should it not be the same to have your house cleaned, or to have a meal cooked, or to have your laundry done? It is a service and you must pay for it. It might be more expensive than you think it should be, but it is a service. A person must make her or his living off of that service, and we say that they are entitled to the same decent wage and decent standard of living as any other worker.
This basically, I guess, would be like we're saying the difference between two cars, a Cadillac or Ford, which one can you afford? If you want somebody all week long, then that's what you call a luxury. You pay
That's
for
a
it.
Cadillac.
Right. And if you want a Ford, that's every now and then when you can afford to get it, but you don't pay as much.
You have a model contract, don't you?
Oh, yes, we do. We have a code of standards which we promulgate, and it talks about wages and benefits and working conditions. It talks about relationships. For example, if I call you Miss Elkin, you should call me Miss Sloan. And you should not have your children running around calling me Edith. I'm a
That's
grown
right.
woman. And they should show me the respect to which I'm entitled. However, if you want to call me Edith and I want to call you Sandy, that's fine. But it should be on an equal basis. We emphasize things like promptness, integrity, duties. You should outline the duties so the employer knows what she wants the person to do, and the
Give an
employee knows
example of
what's
that.
expected. For example, suppose you are taking care of someone's child. Now, that's a full-time job. I'm a mother. I had a child care specialist for 2.5 years. She came in to take care of my son, Douglas, to take care of his room, and his clothes, his bottles, nothing else. Because I wanted her to look after my child, to make sure he didn't get hurt, to pay some attention to him so he wouldn't grow up to be a little vegetable. Not to worry about my dirty house. That was my problem.
That's true.
So this is within child care. Now, if you have the woman cleaning and cooking and looking after the child could be climbing up a tree to fall down and break his or her leg. and then you're going to blame it on the poor worker, but she had to be
Exactly.
cooking dinner and cleaning the house. Now you might say, well, I do it as a housewife, but that's your different problem. You got to talk to your husband about that. But don't impose it upon a worker who comes in to do a job. For example, a laundress comes in to do the laundry, or someone who comes in to do the general cleaning comes in to do the general cleaning, and not the cooking and the laundry and everything else. You break it down according to category. And as, of course, we say, if you can't afford the service, then you shouldn't try and get it, and you shouldn't exploit someone because you want the service and can't afford it. We also have a model contract on the bed, which suggests wages, hours, different things, so that there will be a written contract signed by the employer and the employee, so there will be an understanding. Now, this is the way it is with any other job. I know I have a letter of employment. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know what my wages are and benefits and so forth. Why can't it be the same for private household employment?
This is very true. If you think about it, you go back and look at it. I remember I was a superhuman, the super person. You know, I did the laundry, you know, did the cooking, walked the dog, shoveled the snow, took care of the babies, washed the car, cleaned out the garage, cleaned the basement, and I was never supposed to be tired of the children. Now, this is what you call doing everything. Did the cooking, and then the minute one of them came home and one of the kids had fell and got hurt, I neglected him. But as long as the baby fell while the mother was home on the phone, that meant he was just mischief and got in trouble.
Yes.
See, these are the difference, and people better figure out what their priorities are. Is it your child in the first years of his life, or is it your house? I know working for the one where she was Miss Super Clean. Every bathroom had to be scrubbed every day, and she had 4 of them. And they had to be done every day by hand on my knees, and I never want to get on my knees now to do anything anymore. And that's why I figure so many household workers have arthritis and many things of the knees because of this.
She won't get on her knees to pray even.
Not even. No, sir, definitely not, because I think you can listen another way.
Couldn't you make an exception for that?
No, I would not. Definitely not.
We trust in her. She'll provide anyway.
Right. But one of the reasons was because this is what happened to so many household workers. They grow up with grow out of this whole thing, and they come out with the hate factor for families with children. They don't want any parts of children in a home because the ill treatment from the small child that the household workers blame for. Like, for instance, I had spent some time with one, and he brought in all of his little friends at 13 years old, and I had the baby out for a walk, and the kids drank the beer. Guess who got blamed for drinking the beer? That's another thing, too. Or guess who got blamed for taking money out of the mother's pocketbook because they didn't have to ask her? I trust him. But see, you were the household worker. These are the things people don't begin to look at, and they want to know why they don't want to do household work. There's a many answer to it. How many times you expect someone to do all these kind of chores in one day? Most of the time they say, but do what you can. That in itself is defeating.
That means everything.
That means everything. In
Yes.
other words, you have no job description like, I know that I have so much to do in a day, or I have this. Do what you can. That in itself is defeating. That means you're never finished. Or else they don't know how long it takes to clean the refrigerator. I educated one on that one, too. I happened to be late one day. Oh, yes. And she'd been asking me to do the refrigerator, but I had so much to do I couldn't get to it. So I asked her to take it apart and put it in soak. After she disseminated that refrigerator part and put it together and had to scrape the milk off it, I never had any more trouble with her on asking me how long did it take me to do anything. So that's in a day's work. Figure out how dirty your house is, and you do it once, and then you'll know what time it is. And don't half do it.
By the way, we think a lot of these problems are found in household employment because it is considered women's work.
That's right.
You don't pay your housewife to do it, or you're not going to pay another woman any great amount of money to do it. However, 98% of all household workers are women, 2% are men. The men in every state of the country get twice the salary that the women do for doing basically the same work in household employment.
That's right.
Now that's sexism if you've ever seen it before.
They do the maintenance work in the house, or the chauffeur.
It's a profession.
It's a
Oh,
profession for them.
certainly.
Now
Look-
they may be doing the same thing serving as a butler, but it's a profession, and they get paid twice the amount that the woman gets paid. Or they might be cleaning the windows, and the woman's expected to clean the windows.
Sure.
They still get paid twice as much.
Did you see the difference between the 2 salaries that was paid to Nixon's help in Claremonte? It was a difference between
Manola
12,000.
received one
That's
thing, his
right.
wife another.
That's it there. So they're again showing that same kind of attitude reversed again. Many times they say, well, she's doing it for extra work. No woman goes out and works just for extra money.
She works because she has to.
She has to support a family.
And many household workers are heads of their household. So that means that they're supporting themselves and others, maybe children or grandchildren, and they need the money.
And they can't pay gas for less. You think of what the prices are now. And many of their kids who could earn money, the young teenage kids, can't earn any money anymore. And now you have to give that child some money, what little you have. And if you don't, he gets into trouble. And who's blamed for that? You again, because you neglected him. Not that you can't afford it, or you don't have the salary, or you can't do many things for them.
Edith, earlier you brought up the single woman who's trying to raise a child and who needs some help.
Well, this is a very difficult point.
We have 2
because,
minutes.
for example, she might be making $6,000 a year herself. And she has a young child a year. She doesn't want to take it out in the cold every day, or perhaps she doesn't want to take it far. So what does she do? I would say to that young woman, don't exploit another woman. Find 1 or 2 other women in your neighborhood who are in a similar situation. Form a day center or child care cooperative. Have your 3 children together in the home with the most area or something. Have a woman to come in and look after those 3 children. And it should be a delightful experience for the children to begin with. And then you put in together for her salary so you can afford to pay her a salary without exploiting her, but you've found an answer to your problem. We have to teach women not to exploit each other.
There's a book that you brought with you that has most of this information in it.
Oh, it's an excellent book. It's called What is a Day's Work? And what it does, it breaks down household employment into categories. And it tells you basically what a woman can do if she's taking care of a child, or cleaning, or cooking, or doing laundry, and what she can do in a 7 or 8 hour workday. And that she does need a lunch hour and some rest time. And it tells this, and it can be obtained from the Personnel Resources Incorporated, and that's at 4131 North Broad Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Will you leave both of the addresses that you
I'd be glad
said
to.
on the air with us, and then if people are interested, they can contact us. We're out of time.
We could go
And
on.
I really enjoyed having you very much, and I thank you both for being here.
Our pleasure.
Thank you for watching, and good night.
Production funding provided by public television stations, the Ford Foundation, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.